So, following the announcement of the carbon capture and storage licenses, the results in the UK, today we're going to take a look at what that means. So, the first CCS license round opened in June 2022. It got 26 bids from 19 companies in 13 different areas. Now, the goals that were stated were to store 20 to 30 million tonnes of CO2 by 2030, and there was an expectation of there being more than 100 licenses by 2050. Now, here's our predictions. Goal 1, achieving 20 to 30 million tonnes of CO2 storage per year by 2030. We don't think that'll be achieved. You'll see our thoughts in the red tape section. And as for goal 2, this may be achieved, but how many of these licenses will actually become live development projects? So it was announced on the 18th of May 2023, 11 months after the round closed, which is really rather slow for something that's supposedly so urgent and critical. But we understand it's not the NSTA, the North Sea Transition Authority, that's holding things up, but an awful lot of other input from different departments. Now, this process needs to be debottlenecked and speeded up. In many other countries in the world, 3 months seems an adequate amount of time, given that there's been a lot of planning before the round is announced. So again, remove the red tape. 20 licence areas have been announced, amounting to some 12,000 square kilometres. Now, that's from the 26 bids. There's 12 different companies involved, but 19 applied, so 7 presumably didn't pass muster when it came to the work programmes and the bid proposals. What the claim is that this could actually deliver storage for 10% of all the CO2 emissions from the UK, which stood at 341.5 million tonnes in 2021. Now, this first licensing round, it's really all about subsurface characterization. There's going to be seismic shots, there may be some site surveys, there will be some drilling perhaps. But just to characterize the reservoir that the CO2 will ultimately be injected into, it really is just the start. A critical process, but just the start. Now, when you think about the planning permission that's going to go on both onshore and indeed for pipelines and for any offshore facilities, for the supply chain readiness, we haven't really done anything like this before in the UK. And some of that work is kind of being planned with the existing projects, but not yet started in earnest for these first license round awards. Got to overcome new technologies, new challenges, and lots of learnings to be made from around the world. In our TROVE database for CCS, we have every project from around the world and lots of issues. We'll be bringing a video out showing some of the problems that have been in some of the existing carbon capture and storage projects worldwide. Gas gathering, whether it's basically bringing a lot of CO2 sources together or ship importing and some kind of terminal to actually get the carbon dioxide. It's got to be cleaned up, it's got to be piped offshore, compressed and then injected. We've got to look all about the retention, the long-term monitoring to understand whether it's staying in the ground or whether it's actually the plume is making its way to surface and leaking. There's all the commercial agreements that have got to be put in place. There's going to be the ownership disparities between the onshore and the offshore and who's paying for what, all hurdles to overcome. And ultimately, one of the questions is, who pays? How much are companies going to be paid for storing this CO2? Is it going to be government, contract for difference, or is it just going to be passed on to the public through the utility bills? How are the companies involved in this going to make a return on their investments? It is not clear. So the UK is one of the most fiscally unstable regions on the planet. And that's been proven time and time again, and most recently with the double hit on the windfall tax. It really isn't something that business can look at and make a decision on how it invests going forward. So we talked about the red tape. Well, what's that all about? Well, first of all, what's been announced is the carbon storage license. This is something that the NSTA are responsible for, and it's only the first step. Then you have to apply for a second lease, which is from the Crown Estate. So it could be the Crown Estate or the Crown Estate Scotland before a project can progress. There are further consents and approvals, so each time before any work is undertaken, you have to seek the consent or approval of one of the above authorities, so there's still a lot to be looked into. Now, given that the requirements for consents and approvals have to take place before any operation can start, why does it take so much time to actually undertake the license application? It is very, very inefficient. It creates a lot of kind of unnecessary work because, some of these licenses may not go anywhere down the line and may indeed be relinquished before any actually physical work is done on the license. That adds costs, it adds time, and it just slows the process down. And this is why we don't believe that the 2030 goal is going to be achieved without some significant streamlining of the administrative overhead. Seismic and wells, they're just the tip of the iceberg, and license awards may not be accepted by all applicants. It's been a full year since companies determined their bids, and a lot has changed in the last year. And it may well be that some companies don't go forward with the licenses at this time. So here is a map that's released. No details have come out as yet on the licensing round, but you can see in the map here, these are the opportunities in Scottish waters, and we believe that Acorn are involved in that. That's the EnQuest cluster up at the top there. We need to find out details of these. In the southern North Sea, there are lots of blocks identified in here, and it looks like some of the areas have been subdivided. So we expect, Neptune are going to be involved in here. There's going to be something through Bacton out in the Irish Sea. You can see that Spirit Energy with Morecambe Flame. You can see the green blocks. These are the existing carbon storage license. So although this is called the first licensing round, there were licenses handed out ahead of the first round, and they are the Teesside, the Merseyside, and indeed the Acorn, so the 3 existing licenses. In fact, there's 2 there in the southern North Sea. More details to come, and we'll put those in a follow-up video. So one of the reasons why we think there aren't quite so many licenses in Scottish waters, well, that's because a lot of the major sources of carbon dioxide are actually in the industrial centres of predominantly England. Also, the southern North Sea being closer to European sources, it could be that CO2 is imported from continental Europe and actually put into stores on the UKCS. Now, only 13 areas were applied for, so it seems clear that some of these areas have been split up and awarded to different consortia, or they've only been partially awarded. Once we get the information, we'll post more on the terms and conditions in our next video. We do have more information on the who, what and where of the awards from our industry sources, but it isn't public information yet, so we'll hold off until we can post an updated video on that. If you want your company's information included in future Trove news, please email us the details. There's the email address, and if you want to get a video overview, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell, and that way you'll be notified. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you back on our channel before too long.